Alexander stepped out of his sleek black car, the autumn wind biting at his coat. The cemetery stretched endlessly before him, mist curling between the rows of headstones, like silent spirits, whispering forgotten stories. He had visited this place countless times, yet each visit felt unbearably raw, as if the air itself carried his daughter's absence. Clutching a single white rose, he walked slowly, each step heavy with grief, each breath a reminder that Lily was gone. The path was quiet, almost unnervingly so, except for the distant sound of rustling leaves and the occasional chirp of a bird, unaware of the sorrow surrounding it. Alexander's eyes, normally sharp and calculating, were clouded with sadness. In this world of boardrooms and private jets, he had everything, but none of it could fill the hollow ache in his heart. Money, influence, even power. Nothing could bring back the laughter that had once filled his home. Nothing could bring back Lily. When he finally reached the small, carefully maintained grave, Alexander knelt. The marble marker bore her name, delicate and shining despite the years, and for a moment, it felt as though she might still be there. Reaching out with tiny hands, smiling up at him, he laid the white rose atop the grave, the petals almost glowing against the cold stone. His voice trembled as he whispered, "I miss you so much, Lily. Every day, every moment. I wish I could have protected you, loved you enough to keep you here." Tears, rare and unrestrained, slid down his cheeks, leaving tracks of sorrow on a face usually composed and guarded. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves around him, as if nature itself was echoing his grief. He closed his eyes, letting the memories wash over him. The sound of her laughter, the way her tiny hand fit perfectly into his, the warmth of her hugs on rainy days. And then he heard it, a faint muffled sob. At first he thought it was the wind, or perhaps the grief playing tricks on his senses. But the sound came again, unmistakably human, and this time closer. Alexander opened his eyes and scanned the area, heart suddenly tight with curiosity and unease. In the quiet, sacred space of his daughter's resting place, he was not alone. Someone else was here, someone crying. And as the mist swirled around him, Alexander felt a stirring of something he hadn't expected, a mix of apprehension, curiosity, and the faintest glimmer of hope that perhaps, in this place of sorrow, he was about to witness something extraordinary. Alexander's eyes narrowed as he followed the sound through the mist. There, by the edge of the grave, he saw a figure, a man hunched over, shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. In his arms, a small child clung desperately, her tiny face buried in the man's chest. The sight struck Alexander like a lightning bolt. Here was another soul bearing sorrow, yet it was unlike his own. It was raw, unprotected, and selfless in its concern for someone else. The janitor, as Alexander would soon realize, looked ordinary, worn clothes, calloused hands, and a face etched with lines of hard labor. But in that moment, ordinary seemed monumental. The man's tears fell freely, and yet his arms shielded. The child as if she were the most precious thing in the world. Alexander's hand instinctively tightened around the white rose in his pocket, a symbol of his grief, now mingled with curiosity and an unfamiliar tenderness. He took a cautious step forward, his voice soft but deliberate. "Excuse me. Are you okay?" The man flinched at first, startled, then slowly looked up. Alexander noticed the weight behind the man's eyes, the exhaustion of a life lived in struggle, yet illuminated by compassion. The child peeked out from behind the man's arm, her small eyes wide and wary. She held a tattered teddy bear, a silent testament to her vulnerability, and whispered, "I'm sorry for your loss," her voice barely audible. Trembling with innocence and empathy, Alexander froze, the words hitting him with unexpected force. The child didn't know him, yet she sensed his pain and responded with kindness. He felt a lump in his throat. Here in the cold mist of a lonely cemetery, someone with nothing but love in their heart was showing. A depth of humanity that money could never buy. "Who are you?" Alexander asked gently, kneeling slightly to appear less imposing. The janitor swallowed hard, then gestured toward the child. "This is Anna. I found her abandoned in the park a few weeks ago. She needed someone. I don't have much, sir. I'm just a janitor, but I couldn't leave her alone. And this grave." His voice cracked. "I come here to pray for her, to hope she has a chance at life." Alexander felt his chest tighten. In that moment, the world of wealth, power, and prestige he had built seemed fragile and hollow compared to the raw, selfless care of this man. Here was grief transformed into compassion, sorrow turned into action, and Alexander realized that today, by some twist of fate, he was about to witness a lesson in humanity far greater than any business deal or fortune could ever teach him. Alexander remained kneeling a few steps away, watching as the janitor, Ivan, gently brushed a strand of hair from Anna's forehead. The child clung to him, her tiny fingers gripping the worn fabric of his coat, as if afraid the world might let go of her at any moment. Alexander felt a strange mixture of awe and humility. He had built empires, commanded fleets of workers, and moved billions with a single signature. But here was a man with nothing, whose only wealth was his heart, giving everything to protect a child he had only just found. I don't know what I can give her, Ivan murmured, his voice low and tremulous. I don't have a house or a fortune, or a bright future for her waiting somewhere. But I can love her. I can keep her safe, and I can hope she never feels alone. His eyes, filled with tears, met Alexander's, and in them was a courage and purity that no amount of money could replicate. Alexander's chest tightened. He realized that in all his life he had never known such profound selflessness. His wealth had shielded him from suffering, insulated him from the smaller, human acts that gave life meaning. Yet here, in the silence of a cemetery, he was witnessing something far greater than anything he had ever achieved. Here was a man who understood that love was the most valuable currency of all. Anna lifted her small face and looked at Alexander, her eyes reflecting both innocence and trust. He takes care of me, she whispered. I like it when he smiles. Alexander felt a lump rise in his throat. This tiny abandoned girl had survived the harshest trials with nothing but human kindness to rely on, and that kindness had come from a stranger. Ivan continued, his voice quivering with emotion. Lily's grave. I come here because I believe she would have wanted me to help someone in need. I think about her smile, her laughter, and I try to honor her memory by doing right by Anna. Alexander's heart ached. He understood now that grief could be transformative. It could inspire love rather than bitterness, action rather than despair. In that quiet moment, the billionaire felt a subtle shift inside him. The sterile walls of his boardrooms, the piles of money, the cold, polished marble of his success, they seemed insignificant compared to this simple, extraordinary act of humanity. Alexander realized that he had been seeking meaning in all the wrong places, and that sometimes the most profound lessons in life arrive unexpectedly. Carried on the fragile shoulders of a stranger's compassion, Alexander remained kneeling a few feet away, his gaze fixed on Ivan and Anna. The wind had softened, carrying only the faint scent of autumn leaves and the quiet hum of the cemetery. For the first time in years, Alexander felt his grief mingling with something unexpected. Awe, humility, and a stirring of hope. The sight of a man with so little giving so much, of a child finding solace in someone's unconditional care, awakened a realization deep within him. He rose slowly, approaching Ivan and Anna with deliberate care, not wanting to startle them. May I join you? He asked softly, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. Ivan's head lifted, surprise etched across his features. The child peeked from behind his coat, eyes wide but trusting. Alexander knelt beside them, the white rose still in his hand, and for a moment no one spoke. Words seemed unnecessary. Alexander's eyes softened as he looked at Anna's small face. She's lucky, he said quietly, almost to himself, to have you. Ivan shook his head, a bitter smile touching his lips. I'm not enough, he admitted. I don't have a home for her or enough money, or any way to make her life easier. Alexander felt a lump rise in his throat. You have something far greater, he whispered. You give her love. You give her care. You give her hope. That is more valuable than anything I've ever owned. The words were simple, yet they carried a weight neither of them had anticipated. Anna's tiny hand reached out to Alexander's and he held it gently. Her innocence, her trust was overwhelming. He realized that life's true wealth was measured not in riches or titles, but in compassion, kindness, and the courage to care for someone else before oneself. He thought of Lily, his daughter, and suddenly understood. Her memory had been guiding him all along, not toward more possessions but toward deeper humanity. Tears streamed down Alexander's face. But they were no longer only for loss. They were for connection, for realization, for hope. Ivan's own tears mirrored his. But this time there was no despair, only acknowledgement of the life-changing moment unfolding before them. Alexander straightened, looking down at the grave of his daughter, and then at Ivan and Anna. "Your kindness is worth more than gold," he said firmly. His voice steady now. "You've reminded me what it means to be human. And I want to help you, both of you." Ivan blinked in disbelief, and Anna's eyes sparkled, a mixture of joy and wonder. In that moment, grief transformed into purpose, sorrow into action, and the silent cemetery became a place of profound hope. Weeks had passed since that fateful day at the cemetery. Alexander found himself walking through a different world, now one filled not with boardrooms or ledgers, but with laughter, small hands gripping his own, and the quiet satisfaction of watching love flourish. Anna's giggles echoed through the halls of a new home, a safe place provided not by charity alone, but by the genuine desire of a man who had finally understood the value of compassion. Ivan, once a weary janitor, now moved through the home with a dignity he had never known. Alexander had insisted he continue working, but with respect, fair pay, and the security of knowing he would never have to struggle again to provide for Anna. The transformation was subtle but profound. Ivan's tired eyes now shone with hope, and Anna's small face was radiant, with the kind of joy that only comes from feeling loved and protected. One afternoon, Alexander returned to the cemetery, the place where grief and fate had intertwined. He stood by Lily's grave, the white rose still in hand, and let himself feel the full weight of the journey. The memory of the janitor and the child, their courage, selflessness, and humanity stirred something deep within him. He whispered softly, "Lily, you've given life a new meaning. You've led me to this. I understand now." The wind carried his words gently across the misty ground, as if even nature acknowledged the lesson learned. Back at home, Anna ran into Alexander's arms, squealing with delight, while Ivan smiled quietly in the background. The billionaire had discovered something no wealth could ever buy: the power of human connection, the transformative magic of kindness, and the profound joy that comes from helping someone without expecting anything in return. In the weeks and months that followed, Alexander and Ivan worked together to ensure Anna thrived. But more than that, they spread the lesson they had learned. Acts of kindness, big or small, became part of their shared mission. Friends and strangers alike were touched by their story, inspired by the simple truth that compassion changes lives in ways money never can. Standing once more at the cemetery, Alexander looked at Lily's grave and smiled through tears. The sorrow that had once consumed him had been transformed into purpose and hope. He had discovered that grief, when met with an open heart, could lead to acts of profound love. And in that quiet, sacred space, Alexander finally understood the greatest truth of all: that the legacy of humanity is not built on wealth, but on the kindness we give and the lives we touch.